Yes, SABC has denied the allegation that the broadcaster misled the nation with the claim that the broadcasting of President Cyril Ramaphosa's incorrect address on the 5th of September 2019 was an act of sabotage. That follows a report by the Mail and Guardian report saying what led to the error on air was sheer incompetence at the public broadcaster. The publication reported that sources provided it with evidence, including recordings, that proved that the broadcasting of the incorrect clip, the rehearsal clip of Ramaphosa, was not an act of sabotage. We're joined now by Jonathan Thekiso, who's the SABC Group Executive of Human Resources, and I believe we also have Hannes de Buisson of Union Bamau in our Pretoria studios. A very good evening to you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening.
Mr. de Buisson, are you with us? Okay, we seem to not have Mr. de Buisson in our Pretoria studios yet. But let me start with you, Mr. Thekiso. So the thing that has been very troubling from the beginning was the very strong term of the use of the word sabotage. The Mail and Guardian coming out with this report, which you are also rubbishing, saying that what they are saying is not true. What is the overall objection? Is it debunking, dismissing that term, or just saying that it was incompetence at the public broadcaster?
No. We, as a public entity, we refute the statement that's been made by the Mail and Guardian. Basically rubbishing the fact that what we understand and understood to be sabotage, is something else as described by the Mail and Guardian. We have, upon coming into terms with what has happened, in as far as the news desk was concerned on the day, we then embarked upon an investigation, into the matter. And our findings showed that there was a well-considered and a well-coordinated act of sabotage, which led to the embarrassment that the SABC had to suffer, in light of the president's speech. So we stand firm, in terms of our beliefs, based on the investigation that we undertook as an entity.
Let me ask this question, Mr. Thekiso. In that process, those disciplinary processes, was the term sabotage put to any of the staff members who were, put before it?
Look, in terms of the charges that we preferred, on these employees, we characterized sabotage in terms of two very broad areas. The first one was gross negligence. Alternatively, dereliction of duties. And the second one was bringing the company's name into disrepute, alternatively injuring a person's honor or dignity. So, in terms of the articulation of these two charges, for us, when taken together, basically characterize sabotage.
And you are aware at the time of using the term that to most people the understanding of the term sabotage would, according to various dictionaries, mean deliberately destroying, damaging something, especially for political or military advantage. You are aware that this was the meaning that most people would take it to mean, especially in this case when we're talking about the speech of a sitting president of a country.
No, we're totally aware of that. And hence our investigations have shown that there was a demonstrated, well-considered and coordinated act of sabotage. So we were very, very clued up and extremely aware of the connotations that this would bring, within the South Africans around our characterization of the act as being sabotage. We were very aware of that, and we still are convinced, based on the investigation, that there was an act of sabotage, hence our characterization in terms of those charges that I've articulated.
And I'm just thinking in this case, sabotage could actually mean, depending on how far it goes, the act of treason. So when you characterize it to something as gross negligence, and instead of using sabotage when you prefer the charges, was there any particular reason? Because people are saying, what was the prima facie case that led the SABC to say, I quote, a preliminary investigation we had shows that there's an element of coordination that was meant to sabotage the president. It was to sabotage the president.
Yes. And I've said that, in terms of our characterization, in terms of the investigation and what the investigation has uncovered, in as far as this gross negligence is concerned, in as far as bringing the organization's name into dispute, in terms of that characterization, I mean, for instance, how do you explain the fact that a producer is given a particular clip to use on this very, very important occasion, and they choose not to use that clip, but use something else, although the instruction is very, very clear that you shall use this clip? I mean, how do you characterize that? For us, in terms of investigations, and I think it's important that South Africans know this. In terms of our investigations, we have found that there's a demonstrated and well-considered as well as coordinated act of sabotage. And we're not moving from.
So well-considered and well-coordinated would imply people acting in cahoots. And yet, according to your findings, you have found one person guilty to the point that they have been dismissed. One has been given a final warning and one has been cleared. So just in terms of your findings, can you just take us through it? How did you find that they coordinated this? Because now you're speaking about one producer.
Yes. Here's the issue around how the function was discharged. First of all, you're talking about a producer who was responsible for that clip, and this is the person who was dismissed, right? For using a clip that was incorrect. Then you have an executive producer who, because of the fact that they had delegated the function to the producer, were not wholly guilty, in as far as, the infringement was concerned, because they were not discharging the function, you see. But in terms of coordination, we have the producer who was found guilty. We have another individual who was also found guilty, but given a final written warning. And then we have a freelancer, who, because of the fact that they are not an employee of the organization, had to be let go of or basically not be reassigned. So if we talk about coordination, there's reason to believe that there was coordination, amongst the person who was dismissed, as well as the individual who was found guilty based on evidence, but given a final written warning, which is valid for 8 months. And of course, the freelancer who was let go of.
So which one was the freelancer that was let go of? Because to my understanding, you had 3 permanent employees that were eventually part of this disciplinary process, one that was let go of, one that was given a warning letter, and one which was cleared.
No, we had 4 employees. We had the one employee who was not found guilty, based on the evidence presented at a hearing that was chaired by an independent.
So would the freelancer be the video editor? Because of the events that we've been following, that suggested that that would be the video editor. Was he let go of as well?
So there's one freelancer who was let go of, that I'm aware of. And then there was the individual who was found guilty and dismissed. Then there was the employee who was also found guilty, permanent employee, found guilty and given a final written warning.
Okay, we have Hannes de Buisson of Union Bamau with us in our Pretoria studios. Perhaps he can concur some of the information that you're giving to us. Mr. de Buisson, so you hear Mr. Thekiso here saying that one freelancer was let go of, one employee was given a final warning, and one was cleared off. Originally, there were 4 employees. Is this how the events unfolded and the conclusion to your understanding?
There was one freelancer involved in this matter and 3 permanent staff members that was involved in this matter. But we totally disagree with what Mr. Thekiso has said. If you are talking about sabotage, then you're talking about something where there is an intention, it is something that has been planned, but yet you charge the employee for negligence, for gross negligence. So with sabotage, there is intent. Negligence means it was negligent. So it was the public was lied to. This thing was blown out of proportion for their own reasons, and there was not a hint of evidence in the disciplinary hearings that there was a concerted effort from people to sabotage or derail or to ensure that the right clip.
Was the prima facie evidence ever presented to you? Was it ever shown to you to at least have you understand why a public statement was made to say preliminary investigations have shown that there was a well-coordinated and concerted effort to sabotage the president?
But that's absolutely nonsense. There was no such a report. We have seen all the reports that has been submitted. It was done on that particular day, and the day thereafter there was no prima facie investigation or no prima facie evidence whatsoever that was presented that SABC employees worked together in concert to sabotage this clip. The facts of this matter is that the wrong people has been charged. Once there is a person like the president in the stereo, it is the chief executive of the SABC's duty to oversee, that is the protocol, to oversee that particular broadcast. She was nowhere to be found. That was there was no 2 clips, there was 1 clip. It was in fact a live record. In other words, the president was sitting in the Cape Town stereo, and in Johannesburg via a line feed, that recording was done. So it is what we call in broadcasting terms, it was a false start that happened, and normally what should happen was that clip should have been stopped, the recording, and a new recording should have been started.
I need to get back to the SABC statement. Mr. Thekiso, what informed this statement when you spoke about, you say you still stand by your wording, that of the use of the word sabotage, and you go on to say your understanding, equating it to that of gross negligence that you have charged. So, I mean, workers can sabotage a machinery, which is the SABC. Why not prefer those charges? And I go back, what informed that statement? I think for a lot of South Africans, they'd like to know very serious charges.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to hear, and I virtually could not hear anything that.
The question for you, yes. Mr. Thekiso. So I'm saying, so the preliminary statement that was made said that there was preliminary evidence of sabotage. You then went on to say you stand by that term, sabotage, but then you say you had your own understanding. I go back to the issue of why don't you prefer the charge of sabotage? Because workers in themselves can sabotage a machinery, which is the SABC, which is a very important machinery within the South African socio-political environment. Why did you not prefer the charge? What informed this statement?
Well, if you look at our disciplinary code, if you go through our disciplinary code, you will not find a charge called sabotage. However, you will find a number of very serious charges, which, when taken together in totality, will bring you to the conclusion that this is sabotage. And hence, I mentioned the fact that we looked at gross negligence, first and foremost. Alternatively, dereliction of duties. And then secondly, we looked at bringing the company's name into disrepute. Alternatively, injuring a person's honor or dignity or good name. And we use those as a point of departure in terms of the articulation of charges.
But as Mr. Buisson says, that something that is negligible cannot be a concerted and well-executed act, which is that of sabotage. So did you lessen the charges? If so, Why? And why would you continue to stand by that terminology of sabotage? Because, and again, I ask this for those who are trying to unravel the understanding. You've obviously rubbished what the Mail and Guardian has said, but to a people who were under the impression that their president was sabotaged live on air while trying to address them.
Right. Now here's the thing. If you look at three people, right, and I'm going to exclude the employee who was not found guilty. If you look at three people who have similar charges being proffered against them, and those charges being gross negligence as well as bringing the company's name into dispute, you look at the three of them. They are and they all have similar charges, and they are acting in concert. How do you characterize that act of acting in concert? For us, based on these charges that are similar for the three employees, it was logical for the organization to conclude that there is a concerted effort here. There's a well-constructed plan to sabotage the president.
Mr. Buisson, Mr. Thekiso here is saying that you can be deliberately subversive and be grossly negligent at the same time.
No, it's absolutely not possible. But let me correct Mr. Thekiso. The SABC's disciplinary code specifically says that the offences that is listed in the code is not an exhaustive list of offences, and the SABC is not only limited to charged people. So it's absolute nonsense. If they believed that those people did sabotage the president's speech, they would have been charged with sabotage and not with gross negligence. Sabotage as a charge requires that there must be intent of people to work together. They have been charged with negligence, which means there is no intention. Negligence means exactly that.
Okay.
So
I want to ask
you
this question, Mr. Buisson, this issue of board involvement in the disciplinary proceedings. The SABC has dismissed that, says there's no truth to that. Do you understand where does it come from? And why should we still be talking about a process which was credible, but somehow there are echoes of board involvement?
Well, we know that the board cannot be involved. They are not operational, and the moment that they become involved operationally, SABC, that is a breach of corporate governance. So the board should not have been involved, but we have received quite a lot of other evidence where the board has been involved in other operational issues.
Did you receive
SABC
evidence?
As well.
In this case, did you receive evidence that the board was involved? We understand that the GE of News says she was told that she should resign, take the flak for this. Is that not considered board involvement and actually interference?
Well, we have not received the direct evidence in that respect, but there were suggestions, and we heard rumors that is in fact what has happened. In fact, if I recall, someone saw a particular memo that was sent by the board. We haven't seen that. It was not presented as evidence in the disciplinary hearing. So the answer is we haven't seen such evidence, but there was such rumors.
Okay, Mr. Thekiso, you say it was a credible process and therefore it came to the conclusion that it did. Even though you don't use the words, or you didn't prefer the charge of sabotage, you say you still stand by it. Did you at least get an understanding of why? What was the purpose of this plot? Because if we're saying it was well coordinated and executed, it certainly does sound like it qualifies as a plot against the president.
No. Subsequent to our investigations, remember these matters were concluded, quite recently. The organization has an opportunity to look at these matters, post the hearing, and decide in terms of the steps that the organization wants to take.
That's not the question I'm asking. So the question that I'm asking is that you stand by the term sabotage. There has been a finding against the employees, 3 of them, 1 charge dropped, 1 dismissed, 1 issued with a final warning. Have you gleaned from these well-coordinated actions and well-executed actions that you say you have provided proof of what was the end goal? Why were they trying to sabotage the president of the country?
That's something that we still have to find out in terms of what the main purpose was.
That's a very serious thing to still leave lingering, don't you think, though, Mr. Thekiso? Should there have been a conclusion if you're still going to figure out what was the end goal?
No, I'm saying that, subsequent to, the conclusion on the findings. Hello?
Yes, we're listening to you, Mr. Thekiso.
Yes. The the organization still needs to, look at.
Okay, Mr. Thekiso, I'm going to ask you to perhaps please keep your handset away from your face. It seems like your telephone may be pressing up against you and that dial tones are being heard. So you're saying the organization is still going to investigate what was the reason behind the sabotage? Yes. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
So to what end are you then going to prefer more charges against these individuals? Because then it would then suggest to me that they were charged with lesser crimes.
I think we all agree that sabotage is quite a serious, act of criminality. And the organization, based on the evidence that's been provided, will need to get to an understanding as to what the purpose was around these employees, going through and committing the act that they have.
Before I go back to Mr. Buisson, he said there were hints of board involvement in sabotage. You have dismissed this. Do you stand by this as well?
Sorry, I missed that. Hands of God?
Mr. Buisson said they had heard rumors of board involvement and interference. So do you stand by your statement that there was none of this?
I stand by my statement around the fact that the board does not entangle itself on operational matters. And issues around disciplinary hearings and inquiries are operational matters that reside within the HR environment, human resources environment.
It does not, but did it? The question was, did it? He speaks about rumors that there were, and I mentioned earlier on the GE of News and Current Affairs that she was told that she needs to resign because of what happened. She needs to take responsibility. Would that not be viewed as board interference? Concluding the matter before it's even started?
No. This matter is straightforward. There's allegations of sabotage. There's an investigation that's entered into. There's a disciplinary hearing that's chaired by an independent chairperson. There is an outcome. This is purely an operational matter. There was no board interference at all on this matter.
Mr. Buisson, you've heard Mr. Thekiso here saying that they are still going to, post the conclusion of the matter, look into the reports and understand what was the real reason behind this. Does this raise fears that more charges could be pressed against these SABC employees who are members of yours as well?
Well, I must say with the greatest respect, I have never ever heard such nonsense. The SABC has instituted disciplinary action to charge and investigate the so-called sabotage. You cannot now then charge people thereafter. Now, what the SABC has done is the inquiry in respect of whether it was sabotage or gross negligence or dereliction of duty has come and has gone. The SABC cannot, even if they wish to, and they will not, institute further disciplinary action on the same set of facts and then simply call that now sabotage. So the purpose of the hearing was to investigate the so-called sabotage, employees does not get charged with sabotage because there were no evidence. One of the witnesses was asked particularly in the disciplinary hearing, what about the sabotage? And his answer to that was, people were just getting overexcited about this thing. We have audio recordings in that respect.
We have run out of time, Mr. Buisson, but I need to ask you this. Are you satisfied then with the findings of this disciplinary process? Mr. Thekiso himself admits it was a very serious charge and more needs to be done to find out what was the end goal. Do you think all who needed to carry responsibility for this act have been found guilty of it or made to take account for their actions?
I also need to comment, please.
Yes, you will, Mr. Thekiso.
Thank you.
The first thing is that the SABC is a live broadcaster like any other broadcaster in the world. We are seeing on the most prestigious broadcasters in the world, we are seeing mistakes creeping in because it's live television. You can't stop this. The clock is running and you must put content on air. So at best what has happened here is that it was a bona fide mistake that was made where the wrong clip was then loaded into a lineup and it was played out. So at best, those people should have been reprimanded in terms of a performance process to say, do you need training and that kind of thing. The people that really should have been charged are the people that was supposed to, like the GE of news, that was supposed to oversee this process and ensure that this clip or this broadcast goes out perfectly. That is the person that should have been charged. And there are other people that if you then wanted to take disciplinary action, those are the people that should have been charged. But we believe that this was a bona fide error. That was the evidence that was given, and in fact we are doing two things at this point in time. We are reviewing the disciplinary sanction that was meted out to our members, and we are also looking at the possibility to civilly sue those people who has accused SABC employees of sabotage.
And who would that be?
Well, it would be the SABC, the board that went on record, Mr. Thekiso, the spokesperson, the GE, those people who made publicly statements accusing those people of sabotage. They will be liable.
Mr. Thekiso, how do you respond to that? Does it concern you?
Can Mr. Buisson please not put words into my mouth? I did not indicate that there's going to be another round of charges. You asked me a question as to what we thought the purpose was, and I said to you, the organization has gone through a process of investigations, hearings, and what have you. But the organization now needs to be given an opportunity to look at what we believe might have been the purpose, based on the fact that this is a serious matter of sabotage. So can words not be put into my mouth, please? All
right. Is that your final word, Mr. Thekiso?
That's my final word.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Head of HR here at the SABC Group Executive, Jonathan Thekiso, and Hannes Buisson of Bamau in our Pretoria studio.